Saudi Arabia has a reputation for having a harsh climate with very little rainfall. But something shocking is happening right now. The desert is quickly turning into farmland. This change is definitely a big achievement for a country, even though the country gets about 4 inches of rain on average every year. How Saudi Arabia is turning desert into huge farmlands. Stay tuned to find out. Hello friends, welcome back to our channel, The Unknown Facts. In today's video, let's find out how is Saudi Arabia turning its desert into a farmland oasis. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on the amazing mysteries of science. Since childhood, searing temperatures, parched air, and endless deserts were the images that came to mind when we thought of Saudi Arabia. This made sense. In fact, Saudi Arabia is home to the Rub' Khali Desert, which boasts the largest expanse of any desert in the world at 650,000 square kilometers. Do you know that this country, which is the 14th largest in the world and has a total land area of 2.14 square kilometers, does not have a single river that remains permanently in its territory? If you think you've heard it all, take a deep breath because we're just getting started. Saudi Arabia is a country that receives a very low average amount of rainfall. In the history of this country, an annual rainfall total of more than 150 millimeters has never been recorded. Because of this, a large portion of Saudi Arabia has been extremely dry for a very long time, leaving only a small portion of the southwest region for planting. It was estimated that the country had less than 400 square kilometers of land that was suitable for agriculture. This constitutes 0.5% of the total population of the country. At this point, you might be wondering how the locals had managed to stay alive in terms of the agricultural goods they consumed. The majority of people in the country maintained their standard of living before the country began to see a breakthrough in the expansion of its farmland by cultivating small fields with native plants. On the other hand, every other essential food item that could not be grown locally was obtained through imports. At that time, the only area that could be used for planting was a narrow strip along the coast, and the only crops that could be grown were dates and vegetables. Given the size of the country, this restriction was certainly not welcome news. Saudi Arabia is revealed to be the nation that possesses the largest oil reserve in the world. People have a tendency to believe that God gives each person something unique that sets them apart from others. This turned out to be the case for Saudi Arabia, when at some point during the month of March in 1934, a significant quantity of crude oil was found in a field that had been flooded. The height of the dam in meters was exactly 1,440. It went to an incredible depth. As a result, the nation quickly became the owner of approximately 17% of the total identified petroleum reserve in the world. It was estimated that this reserve contained approximately 75 million barrels of oil. Therefore, with the wealth in oil resources, the Saudi Arabian government thought it could do more. And this is how the process of the miracle of rapidly increasing farmlands began. Moving forward in time to the present day, it is now possible to include Saudi Arabia on the list of the modern 7 wonders of the world. This is due to the fact that an area that was formerly a hub for the importation of various food items is now a hub for the exportation of various food items, including wheat, dairy products, eggs, fish, poultry, birds, fruits, vegetables, and even flowers. How exactly did a country that was almost entirely desert go from being a country that imported food to being a country that exported food? What are the Saudis up to that we are not aware of? There is absolutely no magic involved in the process by which desert lands in Saudi Arabia are rapidly transforming into fertile farmlands. While a bit of good fortune played a role, the Saudi Arabian government was responsible for a number of factors that led to this shocking phenomenon. However, exactly what did they do? Hold on tight because we're about to walk you through the careful planning and the serendipitous events that led to the transformation of a barren wasteland into a fertile land. To begin, they made significant investments in various forms of technology. This is due to the fact that technological equipment was required in order to provide everything that was necessary to turn arid land into fertile farmland. So, Saudi Arabia's agricultural state has been changed by putting a lot of money into programs that promote modern farming technology and rural infrastructure. Being a nation that is extremely prosperous due to its oil reserves, the Saudi Arabian government did not take any time to kick back and relax. Instead, they put the nation's resources toward creating fertile grounds for the people to live on. In the early stages of their investment endeavor, the government had placed a significant amount of emphasis on the establishment of production facilities. By 1985, The country had reached a point where it was completely self-sufficient in producing goods such as meat, milk, and eggs. Not only did they no longer need outside help to meet their food needs, but they also became major exporters of agricultural goods. In addition, during this time period, there was a significant increase in the output of milk, which amounted to approximately 1,800 gallons of milk per cow on an annual basis. There was also a rise in the number of fish farms. These farms were established in locations that were both on land and in water, so they could take advantage of both environments. The fact that these fish farms were set up led to the production of seafood. The country benefited tremendously from the shrimp's high economic value. As a result, Saudi Arabia became a big exporter of shrimp to places like Japan and the US. The black tiger breed of shrimps, which was offered for sale, did particularly well in terms of sales. The efforts that were put in by the governments of Saudi Arabia resulted in the country quickly shifting from being an importer of wheat to an exporter of the same wheat silos that were built in 1978, and the country soon became wheat sufficient. Within the major grain-producing districts of Tikal and Kain in the year 1984, the average yield of wheat per acre is approximately 3.6 tons. After some time, grain production increased to such an extreme degree that it eventually needed to be slowed down in order to preserve available water resources. As farming and transportation methods got better, more fruits and vegetables and other important farm products were made. Because of this, things like watermelon, grapefruit, fruits, onions, squash, and tomatoes became very popular in the area and were some of the most popular things to export. Again, the increase in farming meant that the people of Saudi Arabia had more local foods to eat. Because of this, about 500,000 tons of different kinds of dates were made each year. Soon, a lot of factories in the country started making tens of thousands of tons of dates to help fight poverty and food shortages around the world. The country helped out other countries so much that it became the second largest donor of food aid to the United Nations. It should feel great to be in Saudi Arabia for sure. Now, another thing that helped the country's buildings get better quickly was that the government was willing to help local farmers. One way they did this was by giving farmers loans with no interest and technical support services. Again, the farmers had cheap access to water, fuel, electricity, and power, and they could bring in raw materials and tools that helped them farm without having to pay duties. Also, the government was smart and kind enough to give investors benefits that made their mouths water, so foreign partners in a business venture didn't have to pay taxes for up to 10 years. The rules for investing that were put in place in April 2000 went even further to give investors more reasons to do so. None of this would have been possible without the work of the country's Ministry of Agriculture, which made policies that helped local farmers and boosted the Saudi Arabian agricultural sector. Continued to help farmers get the most out of their farming by giving them interest-free loans and subsidies. In 1972, organizations were also made to run grain silos and flour mills. Their jobs were to buy and store wheat, build flour mills, and make animal feed. By building modern highways, farmers in rural areas were able to get to big markets. The government also worked on projects that required a lot of money to help farmers who needed a lot of money. This helped diversify the economy. The government also helped fund research programs that led to new food crops, higher crop yields, and new ways to make crops less susceptible to damage from pests. Local farmers and scientists also worked together in research centers for agriculture at different universities. Water was also needed because it is an important part of farming. Saudi Arabia is a desert country with no rivers or lakes. Water is hard to find and very valuable, and as the country grows quickly, so does the demand for it. Because of this, the kingdom has come up with new ways to get enough water to support its growth. The Ministry of Water and Electricity is in charge of everything to do with water. Saudi Arabia gets most of its water from aquifers. They hold a lot of water deep underground. In the 1970s, the government made a big effort to find and map these aquifers and figure out how much water they could hold. Because of this, it was able to drill tens of thousands of deep tube wells in the best places for both cities and farms. The sea is another important source of water. Desalination, a process that takes salty seawater and turns it into drinkable water, is used to do this. Saudi Arabia is the country that makes the most desalinated water in the world. The Saline Water Conversion Corporation runs 27 desalination stations that make more than 3 million cubic meters of drinkable water every day. More than 70% of the water used in cities comes from these plants, and they also meet a large part of the needs of industry. They are also a major way that electricity is made. Dams are used to hold water on the surface after flash floods. The reservoirs of more than 200 dams hold about 16 billion cubic feet of runoff every year. Some of the biggest dams are in Najran, Wadi Fatima, Wadi Bisha, and Wadi Jizan. This water is mostly used for farming. It is sent through thousands of miles of irrigation canals and ditches to large areas of fertile land that have been left uncultivated. Recycled water is being used more and more as a source of water. The kingdom wants to reuse as much as 40% of the water that people in cities use for household needs. In order to do this, recycling plants have been built in Riyadh, Jeddah, and other big cities with a lot of industry. Recycled water is used to water fields and parks in cities. So what do you guys think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.